For Hello and welcome to KGI. We're just about ready to get started here. I wanted to welcome you all for the, hello and welcome to this KGI webinar. Today we'll be learning about the Certificate in Applied Genomics, a 15-credit program designed for in-career professionals to increase their knowledge and understanding of human genomics. Our presenter this evening is Professor Barbara Fortini, Program Director for the Center for Training in Applied Genomics here at KGI. She is joined by two current students, Dr. Amy Foreman from Amgen and Mr. Paul Anderson from Illumina, who will speak to their experiences with the certificate and be available to answer any questions you may have about navigating this certificate. My name is Beth Walkenbach, and I'm the Director of Corporate Partnerships here at KGI. I, along with Lexi Beard, Director of Outreach for KGI Admissions, will be monitoring the chat and answering your questions throughout the presentation. There will be time at the end for any questions that you would like to pose to Dr. Fortini, Dr. Foreman, and Mr. Anderson. And with that, I will turn the presentation over to you, Professor Fortini.
All right, thank you very much, Beth, for that introduction and for the whole KGI team that made this event possible today. I am going to enable the live transcription for anyone who would like to activate that on their screen. Okay, so again, thank you all for joining us tonight, or whatever hour it is in your time zone. I know we have some people joining us from outside of California, so welcome, especially to those of you who are joining us from far away. Okay. Am I back? I'm sorry, it looked like my Zoom froze for just one moment. Okay. I'm sorry about that, but sometimes that happens when I share my screen. Okay, can everyone see my title slide?
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so again, I was just wanted to welcome everyone, especially those of you joining from a variety of time zones around the world. It is the evening here in California. And so I just wanted to take this next 30 minutes or so to tell you more about our new certificate in applied genomics and whether it might be the right choice for you. Before getting started on the certificate, though, I just wanted to introduce all of our genetics programs at KGI. I have been at KGI for 5 years now, and I originally came to start 2 master's programs. The first was in human genetics and genetic counseling, and the second was a human genetics and genomic data analytics program. And I'm also the program director for that. And that is a master's degree for people interested in learning both human genetics and genomics knowledge and bioinformatics skills to make an impact in the clinical genomics industry. In addition to those 2 master's programs, we have a summer program for undergraduates who are interested in learning more about clinical genetics and bioinformatics. And that program is called CGB, and we have 2 weeks of that program offered every summer. But today I'm going to talk to you about our certificate in applied genomics, which is a program for a very different audience than those 3 programs I just mentioned. So what is this certificate? Well, it is an executive education program, as Ms. Walkenbach introduced it, which means we are targeting people who have perhaps an advanced degree in biology or chemistry and have been working in the biotech or healthcare industry for several years and want to brush up on what's going on in genomics. I'm sure if you're on this webinar, you know that it's a very exciting time in genomics and things are changing very quickly. Myself, I feel like I can hardly catch up, and I spend my whole day, every day in the week, trying to understand genomics and read papers and stay current in my knowledge. And so if you have been working and haven't had the chance to take a deep dive recently, this program was made to give that opportunity to get the Cliff Notes version, or the very up-to-date shortened version of all the important things that have happened in the field recently. And so it is a 15-unit program, which means it's about the amount of credits you would take in one semester if you were a full-time student. But because we are offering this for working professionals, it is spread out over either 1 or 2 years. Okay, so let's talk about why you might want to do this program. Well, KGI has a very innovative approach to education in general. We do a lot of active learning. We do a lot of group work. We really emphasize the learning process, learning from our peers, and all of the networking that happens in the classroom. So this particular certificate is a clinical and applied focus. So we want people to understand not just genomics in general, but how genomics is helping for people in the clinic to either design drugs, to choose the right drug for a patient, to understand disease at a more deep level, anything that might have to do with human genetics and making a difference in someone's life with that information. We also bring together an interesting group of people. We have 2 of them joining us today. And I think one of the exciting parts of the certificate is meeting new people that are also interested in the same topics. And so if you're looking to build your professional network, this is a great place to find like-minded individuals. And I did mention that hands-on active learning. We do want all of our students to approach the material in an innovative way, to use it, to not just read or listen to someone else talking about it, but to apply it so it sticks. And we use all of our knowledge on the science of learning to help make our classroom a very exciting place that will have a lifetime impact on the things that you are presented. So there are a few other certificate programs out there that if you're at this webinar, you may have run across on the internet or through some advertisements. So why would you choose the certificate at KGI? Well, I think there are a lot of reasons. The first is that we are working around your schedule. So all of the courses are delivered online. It's a mix of live interactive sessions with a faculty member. So you're getting time with an expert. And then we have what we call the asynchronous content. That's the homework, but the readings and the activities that help you interpret that information and help to make it stick. And so that dynamic of the live class session plus the additional material will help emphasize all of these course learning objectives. The other really important benefit is because this is an accredited certificate, you are really a student at KGI, and we are one of the Claremont colleges in Claremont, California, which means you have access to everything that all of our students have access to, the library, student services, any of the other things you might miss about being in college that make it an innovative learning community. So what is the program? Well, I mentioned earlier that it is 15 units. This is divided between 5 courses and then a capstone project. We have it set up where you can take any course at any time. So you can enter the workflow at any point of a class that interests you if you just want to take one class or you want to take 2 or 3 classes. But the way it was originally envisioned was for someone who wanted to start with our applied genomics, translating concepts to clinic course. That is 1.5 credit hours, which is the equivalent of a half course if you're familiar with semester-long courses. It's 7 weeks, and it's really the survey course of all the really exciting things that are going on in the genomics industry. The next tier down would be our 3-unit courses. And those are full semester long courses that would have the equivalent of 90 minutes of what we call seat time. But because we have that mix of live in-person and asynchronous activities, we meet for 90 minutes a week, every week for 1 semester. So in the fall, the first course that we offered was human variation and disease. And that was followed in the spring with our clinical actionability and genome editing course, which is going on right now. The other track would be the more technical bioinformatics track, and that's DNA sequencing technology, followed in the fall, followed in the spring by epigenomics. And I'll talk more about those courses in just a moment. Then once you've completed all 5 courses, you would enroll in the capstone project. And this gives you an opportunity to do a long-term project over 15 weeks that really goes into an area of interest to you that applies all of the knowledge and skills from the previous courses in the certificate. So the time to completion, since we just launched the certificate in 2021, we've only been offering the track on the left, but starting in this fall, so if you were to start this summer, you have an option of doing it either in 1 year by taking 2 classes during the fall and 2 classes during the spring, or stretching that out over 2 years, where you would take the intro course, 1 course in the fall, 1 course in the spring for 2 years. And then in the summer, you would finish up your capstone project. So that will be offered next year, either the intensive or the part-time track. So the first course that that we offered, and the one that I teach in the program, is called Applied Genomics: Translating Concept to Clinic. And I love teaching this course because it's all the fun stuff that's going on. I get to talk about all the hot topics, all the really cool technology that's out there. And it's really changing what we're doing in medicine, changing what we're doing in biology, changing what we're doing in drug development. And it really is designed to be a survey of all of the things that have been advancing very quickly, whether that's the RNA sequencing, DNA sequencing, clinical diagnostics, CRISPR. We touch on all of it during one of the weeks. And it's really designed to get to the science behind the headlines. So you may have heard a news story on CRISPR, or you may have even watched a few webinars on CRISPR, but we'll go through the science of how CRISPR works, what are the considerations for applying it in people, and you'll have the opportunity to ask questions to the faculty member, myself for this case, on how it works and any questions that you might not have understood from your readings or any time you had encountered that in the past. We also dive into some of the data analysis challenges, why these technologies have not already taken over healthcare and biology, what's holding them back, and also the ethical considerations. What do we have to think about when we think about these technologies? And so this is a 1.5 credit hour course, which means it meets for 7 weeks. Our next course that we offered, this was a fall course, it's called Human Variation and Disease. So this is the first in-depth full semester length course that we offered. And it was an in-depth study of all of the types of DNA variation we find in humans. And by variation, I mean differences in our genetic sequence between individuals and other members of the population. So we talk about single nucleotide variations, copy number variations, and structural variants at both individual and population scales. And then of course, it's really important to put that in the context of what those variants mean in terms of human disease, whether it's a rare disease that have very few people affected around the world, but has a very high consequence, or the impacts of variants that are common in the population that have small incremental effects on complex diseases like cancer or diabetes. So we talk about both of those types of variation. And in doing so, we also talk about what technologies are used to make the diagnostics that help us find these variations, and just how diagnosis of genetic disease occurs in a clinical setting. And this fall, this course was taught by a genetic counselor who has years of experience in using these diagnostics to diagnose human disease. Okay, our next course that we offer, this is one that's currently going on. It's called Clinical Genetics, Actionability, and Genomic Editing. Now, actionability is a weird word. It's a completely made up word, but in science, we get to make up words. And it has to do with what are we going to do differently in a patient's care because we know this genetic information. I know that a lot of people have still think that genetics is not yet all that impactful in healthcare because we don't know what to do with this information. But that's not true. There's lots of different things we can do today. It might be that we give someone a different drug or a different dose of that drug, and that is called pharmacogenomics. It could be that we can accurately diagnose a rare disease patient much more quickly than we used to be able to. So it is impacting people's care today. And so anything that helps us take a different action based on this genetic information is what we consider clinical actionability. So in the first half of the course, it really has focused on what types of information helps in management of patients. Also, what is coming soon, things that have been shown to be effective in large research trials, and now we need to roll it out into the healthcare system. Also talking about some of the diagnostic products, how do these products get approved? What types of sequencing-based methods are going to be cost-effective for patients? And then in the second half of the course, really pivoting towards pharmacogenomics and then the precision therapeutics that are coming, such as gene therapies or genome editing for disease. And of course, anytime you start talking about editing people, we need to talk about the ethical considerations of that kind of therapeutic approach. So the two courses that we are looking to launch next academic year, so starting fall of 2022, would be our DNA and RNA sequencing course, followed by the epigenomics. So the DNA and RNA sequencing course will be very much about the technology. So how do we sequence DNA? How do we sequence RNA directly? How can we capture all of the RNA transcripts that are in a cell? Do we want to do short reads, long reads? And what are the pros and cons of each technology compared to one another? We'll also have students start to use some of these bioinformatic workflows to analyze raw sequencing data to make some sort of insight or analysis based on those sequence reads, and to understand the challenges with doing these next generation sequencing methods. What are the issues with the workflows? What are things to watch out for when you're doing clinical grade sequencing? And of course, we'll, I'm sure, introduce lots of the new fancy technologies that are out there, such as single cell sequencing, circulating tumor DNA, ChIP-seq, FAIR-seq, all these technologies that are being constantly invented and offered in the field. So that will again be a full semester course offered for the first time fall 2022. And then the follow-up course to that is the epigenomics course. So epigenomics talks about the way that our genome is managed or regulated. The genome is a cool thing. It's both information and a molecule. It is the hardware and the software of your cell. And so the way the cell can manage the genome to mark which gene should be active, which gene should be silenced, involves the modification of the DNA itself and the proteins that organize the DNA. We call that the chromatin. And so this course will look at how chromatin is organized in the cell, how the nucleus works as a neighborhood and a factory. And we're going to use that information to understand the phenotype of cells. So all of our cells have the exact same information in them, but they use that information very differently. And once we crack that code, then we can understand what's going on in a person by looking at the changes in their epigenomics. And so this course is going to be fun because it's going to talk a lot about functional genomics, how we're using that to understand how diseases occur, what is their risk if you could assess that for someone in the future, and also how we visualize these data sets. Because if you do have genome-wide structure data, how do we build these three-dimensional models and look at them to make discoveries? So again, that's offered for the first time spring 2023. Okay, and the last course is that capstone. So once you have taken all 4 of these courses, it's going to be 5 courses, you'll be able to design a project of interest to yourself or maybe to the company you work for to answer an open question in applied genomics And I leave it intentionally very broad. I'm really interested to see what our students want to learn more about when they get to this point of the certificate. And after doing independent study on this question, you'll present a short oral presentation and a written paper to summarize everything that you have learned. And that is worth 1.5 credit hours. Okay. So of course, this is a accredited program. And so we do have a tuition rate that is set for the courses. I didn't mention at the beginning, but you can take one course, all of the courses at any order and sequence with the exception of the capstone. The capstone has to be last. And so the per unit cost or per credit hour is $660, which makes the 3 credit courses $1,980 each, and the 1.5 credit courses $990 each. And I will say for those of you listening, please inquire if you want on any scholarships that may be available and if your company has a tuition matching program. All right, so hopefully I've gotten everyone here excited about the certificate and enthusiastic for signing up. So if you are interested, we try to make it as simple as possible to join the certificate program. It is a web form to start the application. And in addition to some just questions about your contact information, we do ask for a personal statement, just 500 words on why you're interested in human genomics and what do you think is coming? Why do you think this is an exciting time? And how will applied genomics change the bioscience industry and healthcare? Then a CV or a resume, so we can learn more about you and where you are in your career and your educational journey. We do ask for one recommendation. So you'll put in contact information, they'll be sent a link and they can fill out the web form with the recommendation. And then in order to award you the certificate, which again is accredited, we do need your transcripts. So you don't need an official transcript to apply, but before we can award you these transcripted units, we will need a transcript on file. All right, so I think I've been talking for about half an hour now. So I would like to open up the floor to any questions you have for me, and then I will turn it over to 2 of our fabulous students to give you their perspectives.
Hello.
Mm-hmm.
Hi. I do have a question. I noticed you mentioned that there'd be about 90 minutes of live class session every 3-unit class. About what time do those live sessions run?
Yes, so we have them in the early evening for the Pacific time zone. So currently all of the courses go 6:30 to 8 p.m. Pacific. So right now we alternate, some courses are on Monday nights and some courses are on Tuesday.
Okay, thank you. And then a follow-up question. I know it's online right now. Will it remain online throughout the period?
Yes, so we do intend to have this as an online offering indefinitely, but we also, in the future, KGI is always happy to get people to visit on campus, but that would be a different program. So the goal for this is to reach people throughout the United States and the world, so we intend to keep it online.
Thank you.
Okay.
And did you say it was 15 credits?
Correct, 15 credit hours. So that's 1.5 credit hour course, 4 3 credit hour courses, and then the capstone is 1.5.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, well, if there are no more questions right now, I'm going to turn it back over to Beth to introduce our next speakers.
I do have one more question.
Okay, good.
For the application, is it a rolling admissions basis or is there a hard deadline?
So there is rolling admissions per se, but we do have cutoffs for each course as it starts. And actually, let me share my last slide right now again. I was going to do this a bit later, but because you asked, so the application is open right now. The deadline, if you would like to sign up for the summer offering of 9001, which is the Applied Genomics Concept to Clinic, that is June 1st, and the course will start on June 21st.
Thank you.
Some great questions. Thank you very much for posing those questions to Dr. Fortini. Do we have any other questions for our program director before we pivot to our industry guests? Okay, well, thank you, Dr. Fortini, for that overview of the certificate and the courses. We now turn to our guests, two of our industry-sponsored students enrolled in the certificate. We have Dr. Amy Foreman, Director of Global Publications at Amgen, and Mr. Paul Anderson, Senior Director of Clinical Operations at Illumina. Both have generously offered to share their perspective and experience, as well as their time, thank you both, of their experience with the certificate in applied genomics. And so to begin, could you each share with the audience what attracted you to this certificate? And Dr. Foreman, if we could, please start with you. Dr. Foreman, you are on mute.
Okay, the hazards of working from home. So thank you for having me and for sharing my perspective. So I was very interested in this. So I was trained as a scientist, but I have not worked as a scientist in over 15 years. So I've used my scientific background to work on publications. So I get to communicate the science, which is very, very exciting for me. But as I've heard all the research that's come out of Amgen Labs and through other companies, this allowed me to kind of get a better understanding of all the techniques that I used to use and how they're being used now. And also something that I really enjoy about this program and what interested me in is not just like, what do these techniques do and how do we use them to discover the drugs, but the applied aspect and the ethical aspects, right? Just because we can do something doesn't mean we should. And what are some other considerations? Because Amgen's mission is to improve patients' lives. And I really felt having a deeper understanding of how these technologies were being used to develop new medicines supported that same mission.
Thank you, Dr. Foreman. Mr. Anderson.
So good evening. Thank you for having me as well. I come from a different background than Amy. I've been in life sciences for over 30 years, but it's always been from the operations perspective. So I have an engineering degree, not a microbiology degree, and not a PhD. And in most of those 30 years, the applications, or at least the production from Illumina, is supporting research, RUO products, not clinical products. But that's changed really in the last 10 years and more so in the last 5 years. And it's changing now where more than half of our customers are clinical customers. So we have clinical products for clinical customers as well as the research customers. But what I have is really a gap in my knowledge of the molecular basis for disease caused by genomic variation. So I know how to make the products, but not how to design them, and not really the upstream aspect of that, nor a great understanding of our ultimate end users, the physicians, who are then having therapy selection with customers, actually patients at the end. So for me, this course provides a great understanding of the pieces that I'm missing in the puzzle. So understand how our physicians will use the products and understand the molecular basis for that.
Thank you very much. If anyone does have any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat or to raise your hand. We're certainly welcome. We welcome your input, and we can pivot from the questions that we have prepared to those questions that come up organically from our audience. So please do contribute. So if I may ask each of you too, what has surprised you the most about being a student as your mid-career?
Amy, you want to go first? Or?
Sure. So I think, I've been out of school for over 20 years. This was the first time going back and taking, I've done professional education and learning but really going back to school. So I think Something that surprised me most about being student, new technologies, nothing was online, everything was in person. So it's been adapting to that, but everybody's been very supportive. I also have something really enjoyed, because before you were always in a program and everybody was in the same program as you. But now that we have people like Paul has a very different background than I do, and we have all these other people who have different backgrounds, it's really enriched the learning experience, because you're not just learning from your professors, you're also learning from your classmates. And when you work on group projects, you can kind of all bring your strengths together, and you learn so much more than you thought you would.
I agree with Amy on that. And for me, it's 37 years since my last even graduate exam. So taking an exam online now with a time limit on there is a whole different experience we're used to. So kind of adapting to that. The other thing is I really, it surprised me how much I don't know of the molecular biology aspects. So a lot to learn there, but thanks to the wonderful teaching of Dr. Fortini in that overview class, that really, really helped a lot to get me up to speed to take the first real class.
Paul, you mentioned getting up to speed on the molecular biology as well as some of the technological implications. Would you say those were the biggest challenges of taking the certificate?
I would say so, because doing it online, actually, that's the only way that works for me. So I work in San Diego, and so it wouldn't any commuting up to the LA area would be a problem. The time works out well in the evening because I normally don't have meetings after 6:30. So that works. And being able to have time to do the assignments and the extra reading, for me, works well on the weekends. So it's, I would say, really no issues from that perspective.
That's great. Well, it sounds like you're managing it really well as well. So for you, Amy, how about you? Did you have any particular challenges, and could you share how you navigated those challenges with regard to taking the certificate?
Sure. So I think something that's important is that they do recognize that they're working with professionals and we need flexibility, right? So I've taken the first 2 courses. I started the third. I had a major shift at work and I had to pause, but they're understanding and they're able to let you do that. So I can feel like I can come back when I have more time to give to the course, because I think it's really rewarding. And, sometimes the homework is really easy and simple and doesn't take it, but sometimes you hit something where it's not your area of knowledge, and so I'll want to choose to go back. And that's where it comes great that they treat you like a regular student, because having access to the library and finding some of the other bits and pieces that can really supplement what you're learning and kind of cover some of those gaps that are there has been very, very helpful. So I think it's there. And the professors have been very good about laying out, there's the syllabi, laying out things so you do have time to complete them. Because even if you're saying, oh, we estimate no more than 2 hours of classwork, when you are working full time and you have family life and other commitments, sometimes it's harder to squeeze in 2 hours to give your full attention to something. So I think they make it easy for you to try to fit it in.
Great, thank you. Both such rich answers with so much more than the answer than the question supplied. So thank you for expanding on those areas. How do you think the certificate is contributing to your current role right now at Illumina and Amgen respectively? And how might it contribute to future directions?
I'll go. So for me, it actually helps a lot in my current role because I now interface a lot with the product development teams. We have many, many new products sort of in the pipeline that are for different oncology targets. And so at least being able to speak the language or understand, oh, that's for a KRAS mutation. Okay, I understand. So it helps a lot on that side. So it gives me at least enough to understand how the new products are going to work or why. So it's great. It really has expanded my knowledge. And that's only after these two and a half classes here so far.
Would you say, Paul, that it's giving you that language to communicate with some of your colleagues on that product development side?
Very much so.
Great. And Amy?
Yeah, I think it helps me understand why we're choosing targets and what modality we're using. So there's lots of, it's not only finding what clinical target you're going to use, what are you going to use to target it? Are you going to use antibody, small molecule, things like that? And I think anytime I can understand more about the science behind the results, that helps me communicate that much more clearly to various audiences who need to know this information.
Great, thank you both. And I think the last question that I have for each of you is, and some of you've touched on some of it already, particularly Amy with your response, but what advice might you have for professionals who are considering enrolling in the certificate in applied genomics?
I would say for anybody that is interested in human health and improving human health and just understanding, even if you're not working in that field, it's a great program if you don't have that already a PhD in microbiology or something. So that part is really good. What I find also, it's really helpful in my life outside of work. For example, a friend of mine in December took the Gallery test, which we offer to all of our employees. And so he took the Gallery test, not knowing that there was anything wrong. It's just great, take it and see what 50 cancers you might have. And unfortunately, in his results, on New Year's Eve, he found out he actually did have a cancer. But he wouldn't have known without this new test that's only been recently allowed, that you can find it when it's in stage 1 as opposed to stage 3 or 4. So helps on that side. And last night, I received a message that my sister-in-law was diagnosed with a genetic disease that's fairly rare. And my wife's like, well, what does that mean? I'm like, oh, give me a minute. Let me go to ClinVar and look up some things here. And here it is. And if you have the Z variation of that, it's generally pathogenic. And here's what you can do. And here's a treatment. And by the way, siblings of a person with that should also get tests. So maybe you and your other sister. So it's helpful in real life besides our work life.
Well, thank you for that. I'm sorry to hear that it's been useful in that way, but happy to hear that you've been equipped with that knowledge to perhaps better navigate some of those challenging circumstances.
And that's a big thing for people who don't understand or only rely on just what their doctor tells them. But here you can find this wealth of information. And that's what this course teaches you, is how to find information and understand it, not just what we talked about in the class, but apply it in a much broader perspective. So I'd say sign up, everybody, for this class, please.
Yes, absolutely. And I would echo Paul's thing. It's the understanding, because that's the thing, is we have these amazing technologies, and companies like Paul works for has accelerated the ability of using these technologies, beyond using, like you're saying, your sequencing where you get something small, and really, but what do you do with this information, and how should it be used, and what should you do? So I think because it kind of encompasses that whole thing, and they do start off like literally the first class. So even if this isn't your background, or you haven't been in school for 20 or 30 years, it literally starts off as just a reminder, this is DNA, this is RNA, this is how we get there. So there's no assumptions nor criticisms if you've forgotten it or you've never seen it. So I think it can help a wide variety of people and with various different backgrounds, and it's really an enriching experience.
Thank you both. Well, those are the questions that I had prepared. Do either of you, and you've done such a wonderful job preparing or providing such thorough responses, is there anything else that you've experienced throughout the certificate that you'd like to share with us before we turn it back to Dr. Fortini and Lexi for admissions details?
I'd just like to note that the professors make a huge difference in there, or they're each great maybe in a different way in some cases. So we mentioned the second class, or the fall class, And having the perspective of a genetic counselor with 25 years of experience teaching that, and we, in that class, we picked 1 or 2 diseases every week to go through and understand the clinical ramifications of that. But to hear some of the experiences of actual patients counseled when they had received that, and hear the perspective of 25 years ago, what were the methods for diagnosis of that? You didn't have sequencing, you had to do everything, kind of make all of your guesses before with simple tests on, and how did that limit the actionability and potential outcomes? So it was great to hear that historical perspective, but also more of the human perspective, not just here's a disease and here's what's happening inside from the molecular process, but here's what it means to the person and how do you kind of counsel them through that. So a lot of great aspects of this. And as Dr. Fortini was saying, now we're getting into ethical issues and many others, and now future technologies are currently in the market technologies, but growing, like gene editing. So all that is really fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. The professors are all different, and they all bring their own perspective and flavors, which makes the classes much more interesting. And I also say, just the other thing, Dr. Fortini mentioned the opportunity to network, but I think it's bringing together these people that you may never have met, either through because you don't work at the same companies with them, you wouldn't belong to the same professional societies, but you share a common interest. So that's been really something that I've enjoyed as well.
Great, thank you both. I'll just give another moment for any questions to bubble up from our audience. Practicing that listening time, I think that professors try to employ.
We call it strategic silence.
Strategic silence.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I can just note another thing. In the classes, there's a lot of opportunity for dialogue. So it isn't just a one-way presentation. It's raise your hand, ask a question, and the professor, pivots to that and answers. And it helps the whole class. If one person didn't understand, then probably everybody else didn't, as well. So they encourage that. They want that interaction. So that was really helpful. So you're not like, oh, I didn't understand that, so now I'm thinking about that, where they're talking about something else. I'm not following that either. So it's great to be able to say, wait a minute. Can we talk about that again?
Mm-hmm. Okay, we do have a question in the chat about making a career shift into industry from academia. I think this would be a great chance to network. And also, we do spend a lot of time talking about what is current in the industry, current in healthcare, and what are the trends. So if you do want to get that perspective to understand where in industry you want to go, I think the certificate could be quite helpful. It's so broad these days. Genomics is playing a role in everything from like basic drug discovery, drug development, clinical trial design, and to like patient management, all aspects of all of healthcare really has a genomic component these days. So I think if you are trying to find your most interesting niche out there in industry, this could be a good opportunity.
Looks like we have some additional question coming through regarding the capstone project.
Feel free to unmute and ask, or you can keep going in the chat.
Hi. Good morning. Actually, I'm calling from India, Delhi, and my timeline is early morning here today. So it was a good morning from my side. A very good evening to you all. I hope I'm audible to all.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So thank you, Dr. Fortini and Dr. Anderson, Dr. Paul, for your amazing insight into the program. As I have shared with you previously, that I am an academician, and I want to make a shift over to my career into industry. And I had a previous, I have my qualifications in biotechnology, but I have left that, say, 25 odd years behind. And I haven't been in touch with the regular industry required curriculum. So how is this helpful for me if I intend to shift to the industrial environment? And how is the capstone project helpful in achieving that? If you could please be more detailed information I can get on that. Thank you, Dr. Fortini.
Okay, well, I'll let one of our two students maybe answer, because I don't work in industry. So if you were making a shift to industry, would you find this the certificate helpful?
I would say yes. While I've been hiring lots of people lately, I look for people with experience in the industry, but also hiring people that don't have it, because it's really hard to find people that are available these days that have had the experience. And so otherwise, then I'll just look from an educational background. Do they have that, even if they don't have industry experience in life sciences, but at least come with an understanding of the science. So rather than learning all about how Illumina works and how the products work, at least you come with the background of how the science sort of works. There's a lot of different ways to go within industry. All of mine is within operations, but even that, there's a lot of PhDs of solving the technical issues relative to scale up and manufacturing, but there's a lot of opportunities in the development. So if you just have in product development, if you just have the science understanding, so there's lots of opportunity. And the more you know, the more we like you.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Foreman, for your help. My another query to Dr. Fortini is that how is this going to help if I intend to pick this up as a I would reframe my question. If I intend to apply for a opening, how is it in overseas? How is it going to help me? Is it, do I need to have more educational requirement? Because I don't have an experience in the industry. So will this capstone project help me in getting the necessary requirement to, as of applying for the work permit, something like that? Is it possible? I mean, is the window open there somehow?
So the capstone is an opportunity to showcase skills. And so if you are looking to move into a particular role, I think that's why I have intentionally left the capstone portion pretty vague. So anything that you would be interested in, a particular field in industry, a particular question, step in drug development, you could choose a project that could really highlight your qualifications. And then once you have your final capstone project, that's always something you can reference when applying to a job. With regards to licensure or applying, I don't know if I completely understood your question, but it is an accredited certificate. So if you were to list it on your resume, a company could call KGI and confirm that, in fact, you did receive this and it was worth, the equivalent of 15 credit hours, which is different than some of maybe different web certificates that you get that really is just, you complete some quizzes, but there's no verification that, the same levels that we do for transcripted official courses in the United States.
Okay, sure. Thank you, Dr. Fortini. And my last query, sorry, I won't take much of time. This is regarding the live classes. As you have shared with us, that in every semester, we'll have 3 credits of the live sessions, and that will be according to the Pacific time, preferably in the evenings. So for me, it will be early mornings. So do we have a fallback of any recorded, say if we want to pick it up somehow, if there is any connection error, do we have that possibility available? Thank you.
Yes. So just for your reference, the time zones are so that the class would start about 30 minutes from now and go for the next 90 minutes. But we do record every session. Now we do want people to participate live. So if you can't make it, it would be considered an absence, either excused or unexcused, but we would have the recording available for you to review after the fact, so you still have access to the content. Because of course, things happen. Sometimes you have to miss for family work obligations, but we don't, it is not structured so that you can just watch the recordings and do the work. We are requiring live participation in the vast majority of the sessions.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Fortini. Thank you.
Just to note, the presentations, the professor's slides, they're also posted every week.
Yeah, and just being someone in industry, just to answer your early question, would this help you get in? And I'd say it depends, and it would depend what the company is looking for. I do agree it could really, and this is something, you know, I think that I've experienced since it's been 15 plus years since I've been at the bench and using any of these hands-on, it has really helped close the gap and what, you know, I remember what it was like and how we are now. So that I think it could help, but a potential recommendation would be, you know, all the employers have their openings posted online. Find ones that are really of interest to you and see if this is a match, right? I think this certificate will definitely close your gap, especially in biotechnology and how we're using that. It could be very helpful, but that could also then help you figure out what could your capstone project be that would help aim you for your desired role that you have.
Thank you, Dr. Amy. That's a wonderful insight you have shared with me. Just a little query I have for you is that I was wondering that do we have interactions before the capstone project actually starts with the industry? Because as I have shared that my background is academia, and if I need to intend to join industry, I need to have networking for my capstone project. So anyway, is it an individual approach we have to take, or does the KGI has some references to start with for the naive starters like myself? Thank you.
Yeah, I think one of the first networking opportunities is the classes. So you will be in class for the previous 5 courses with other people working in industry. So you'll make connections there. I'll also say that again, as a official student at KGI, you have access to all of our industry speakers. You'll get announcements when we're having events, and there are often networking events, and I'm sure Beth could speak to some of our corporate outreach that we do, just as our standard dedication to innovation and industry.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Fortini. Thank you, everyone.
Absolutely. And what I can offer is, as Dr. Fortini said, as a KGI student, you have access to all that we do provide for our students. And so periodically we will have industry talks whereby we invite people from industry to speak about their career paths, as well as we have other programs happening at KGI, namely the Team Masters Project. And the Team Masters Project, we have teams of students working with company-sponsored, company-sponsored projects, some authentic work experience for our full-time degree students. But we do have connections with various companies. And so we may be able to leverage some of those connections to assist with the identification and perhaps execution of a capstone project. That's something that Dr. Fortini, we can look forward to having some additional conversations about.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I will say for people who aren't familiar with KGI, we are very industry oriented compared to a lot of graduate institutions in the United States. We are not a place that frowns upon those connections, because there is just that amazing synergy right now between all the great science that happens at research universities, but also at these companies that are very much at the forefront of pushing, especially genomics forward. And so I think it is one of the differences that makes KGI unique is that we really embrace the connection of biotech and the bioscience industry with KGI.
Thank you. Do we have any additional questions or any additional comments?
I do have one about the application. I see that it says to submit the unofficial transcripts. If you've went to more than one school, or if you're currently enrolled, do you submit all the transcripts or just the most recent ones?
Typically, you'll want to include all your transcripts, at least in order to earn your credits, like to get the certificate. We'll definitely need those, but we know it can be a little bit of a challenge, especially if there's a place where you just took one class or, a few fill-in classes. So prioritize your degree granting certificates. Those would be the ones that are most important for your application review. And then those other certificates we can always take later, as long as we get enough about your academic credentials from those main transcripts. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes, that does. Thank you.
Sure.
And then I just had one like more general question, like about how big is the class size?
That's a great question. So we've been, I don't know, Beth might have to write, the smallest one was probably 16 or, oh, we had a much smaller one in the fall. So 6 to 8 students up to 24, I think has been the largest. So I envision that, as going forward, we're going to aim for that 24 number because we do want it to be a very interactive team building type environment. It's not going to be some massive online many thousands of students. You will definitely get to know everyone in the class and you'll definitely get to know your professor.
Okay, thank you.
I will put a link to the website in the chat here in just a second. So that's a great resource just to learn more about the program or read some information again that you heard today. And that also includes the link to apply. So if you're ready to apply for summer, that application is open and you can apply up through June 1st. And the link for that will be right there on the page that I put here in the chat.
Thank you very much, Lexi. And we are at time. And so I invite you as well, if you have any additional questions with the links that Lexi is providing in the chat, there will be access to ask questions of admissions at kgi.edu. And then you're also welcome to contact Dr. Fortini and contact me directly as well. I thank everyone so much for taking the time this morning, to join us for this overview of the certificate in applied genomics. And we look forward to hopefully seeing many of you in future courses and perhaps even for the start of June 21st with the start of CAG 9001. All right. Thank you all. This webinar is concluded.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.